coming from a history of divorce doesn't mean you now have to get a divorce. It does mean that that may be something that you have to pray against in a different way than someone who comes from a line of successful marriage.
Absolutely.
What's up, y'all?
Yeah.
We know it has been a while.
A while is an understatement.
But all is well.
Yeah.
We just have been busy. You know, Mark is a lead pastor. So it's kids, everything's been busy. But we're back.
We're
and
back.
We want to welcome you to another episode of Young and Married.
Let's go.
Where we are helping you thrive, whether you're in a marital relationship or you are just looking to be married. We know that we've got something that will help you out.
Yeah. So we got a good one today.
I think so.
We have a good one. We're going to be talking about divorce. So why don't you kick it off?
Yep.
Let folks know what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, today we are talking about divorce is trending. Should you be worried? Now, I wish I had some news anchor music behind me right now because that would be perfect. It feels like it needs to cut away for 2 seconds and come back. But should you be worried? And I think this is a big one because a lot of people do want to be married, but then there's a part of them that also no longer believes in the ability for marriage to be successful anymore.
Okay.
And so we're talking to you if you are afraid of getting married. You want to get married. You want to have a relationship. You want to fulfill that God-ordained relationship in the earth, marriage between a man and a woman. But you are just nervous and you feel like, does anybody's marriage last these days?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely trending. Divorce is. And people are either thinking that I can get married and if it doesn't work, I'll just get divorced.
Yeah.
Or they're thinking, why should I even get married? Because the majority of marriages don't last, don't stay together.
Yeah.
And I think that has definitely shaped how people approach marriage, their fear surrounding marriage.
Yeah.
And we just want to talk about a few things today, just to give some hope and some encouragement to marriage and say it's still a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Like we've been married, gonna be 18 years.
18 years this year.
In June, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
It absolutely takes work, but I'll say this, Jen. I think people come into marriage with these rose-colored glasses, with these ideas of fairy tales, with the highlight reel. Like, they don't even have a good idea of what happens behind the scenes of a marriage. Most people don't. And so when they get into it, the work shocks them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they're like, can I really do this?
Yeah.
And divorce wouldn't trend as much and people wouldn't feel like that's a way out if they came into the marriage with better assumptions.
I think that's good. I think assuming that you're going to hit several rough patches throughout the course of your marriage is helpful because you can't live with someone for 10, 15, 20, 40, 50 years and expect that you're going to hit 0 rough patches or you're going to hit 1. You're going to have because life comes with several rough patches.
Yeah.
And so if you have to do life with someone, that's going to present certain challenges. So I think you're right. Coming into it expecting that you're going to have hurdles, but many hurdles along the way is great. But also go into it with the mindset that my joys and my triumphs with this person are still going to outweigh the hurdles.
Absolutely.
And focus on that. I also think that what is important when figuring out how am I going to make my marriage last if I get married is remembering that your marriage really is like a fingerprint.
Okay.
So no two people have the same fingerprint. Now, actually, what do they say about that as it relates to twins, though? Because my best friend has an identical twin.
Yeah, but they still have different fingerprints.
Oh, good. So guess what? If you have an identical twin.
Or is there, I think we've watched some mysteries, right? And some murder mysteries where they've been able.
They couldn't pin it on one twin or the other because the fingerprint at least was so similar that
I think
they couldn't
DNA is
distinguish it.
different, but fingerprint actually
So,
is close.
you know, unfortunately, if you're a twin in real life, then you probably do have the same fingerprint as somebody, at least an
Right.
identical twin.
Right.
But your marriage is like a fingerprint because generally speaking, they say that no two people have the same fingerprint.
Yeah.
And I think that's crazy how God designed even our fingerprint.
Yeah.
One, because you ain't gonna be out here framing people for murder. And then two, I think that it's great to look at your marriage the same way. Why? Because if you go into your marriage with the mindset that my marriage is unique,
Right.
and what's going to work for me may not work for someone else, and what worked for someone else may not work for me, that's also helpful. You will get tripped up every time you want your marriage to be exactly like someone else's marriage.
Yeah.
Because you're in a marriage with one person and the two of them are in a marriage together and the four of you are all different, even if you have similarities.
Right.
So I think, Mark, sometimes what happens is, especially in our culture, our Western culture is big on comparison, even if we don't mean to compare. Pastors compare their church to another pastor's church.
Yeah.
A mom sees a dope cleaning motherhood channel on social media and now she feels like, oh, I'm not a good mom. I'm not an organized mom. I'm not. So I think the same thing with marriage. If you're out here saying my marriage has to look exactly like this marriage that I saw, then you're in for trouble, because even if that marriage is successful, it's not your marriage.
It's not your marriage. And just being cool with that and being confident in, hey, God has blessed me to be married, blessed me with a great spouse, and we're going to ride this thing together. I'm going to ask you this, though. Do you think, though, Jen, that the culture we're in has really affected marriages and increased divorce? What I mean by the culture we're in is people don't really stick around and stay in anything for a long time today.
So.
Like we don't stay at a job for a long time. We don't stay in the same career for a long time. We don't live in the same house. Like people used to buy houses and 30, 40, 50 years, they're in the same house.
Well,
like
because the materials were better. Y'all contractors out here not using the same bricks to lay the houses today that you used to lay my grandmother's house. So y'all using cheap bricks and we can't stay in the same house forever.
Wow. I mean, I didn't know we were coming for contractors and builders.
Well, if you lay in cheap bricks, we coming for you.
But
coming for your neck, coming for your drill, coming for your hammer.
But you know, I'm thinking about grandmama's house was always grandma's house.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't moving.
It's true.
She wasn't moving. We know grandma's house is grandma's house.
Yep, it's true, because the house my grandmother was living in until the day she died. I mean, my mom and her youngest sister, because there were 7 siblings originally all together, and my mom and her youngest sister grew up for part of their childhood or at least teenage, young adult years in that house. And then she lived in it until she was almost 100. And so you're right. I mean, people didn't even switch houses as much. But
so do you think that like that has really played into it? That we want to change cars, we want to change clothes, we want to change careers.
Yeah.
So we want to change spouses. Like we're always looking for the next thing.
I think even if it's subconscious, this society and culture definitely has had an impact on the rate of divorce, because I also think people are just listening to poor advice online.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because ChatGPT often gives you what you want to hear. And you're out here typing in ChatGPT, my spouse is getting on my nerves, should I divorce them? And ChatGPT is like, I'm here for you. Of course you should divorce your spouse. Why live with someone that's getting on your nerves today? Okay? And so you're not going to Christ. You're not going to a successful married couple that has a Christ-centered marriage. You want to go to ChatGPT. And, you know, I love ChatGPT, but y'all need to get off of Al Gore's internet and stop looking to Al Gore's internet for marriage advice, because these people are out here telling you if y'all been married 10 years and he still can only take you to this type of restaurant, leave him. If you've been married for 10 years and she still doesn't know how to fold laundry, leave her. So, why are you looking away? So
I'm just letting you go.
I don't know where Al Gore is right now, but his internet is causing y'all a lot of marital
Is that
issues.
is that like, Gen Z is like, who's Al Gore?
They probably don't even know who I'm referring to, but that's okay. Y'all can Google him. Ask ChatGPT since y'all like ChatGPT so much.
Right,
Ask them who
right.
Al Gore is. But I used to love when the internet first came up with that phrase, Al
Yeah,
Gore's internet. I
yeah.
just love it.
Listen,
It's just hilarious to me.
that's like the early stages of
It
internet.
is. That's why. That's
Um,
why some people that watch us are probably like, "What are you talking about?
listen,
Who is Al Gore and why is it his internet?" But
yeah, but I absolutely feel like people are getting back, but they're getting advice from a culture that says if it's not what you envisioned, then change it.
because cancel culture, Mark, has not just come to political figures, it's not just come to religious figures. Cancel culture is now seeped into marriage.
Yeah.
And that is the danger.
Cancel your husband.
Cancel your wife. And that is the danger
Yeah.
because if you are going to have a biblically based marriage or a faith Christ centered marriage, then cancel culture can't be a part of that.
No, no. It can't be like there was no cancel culture in God's vision of marriage and God's idea
Unless
of
the
marriage.
children of Israel keep worshiping idols, then you will get canceled.
Listen, he's like, I'm gonna cancel you, but even in that, he's like, I'm gonna cancel you, but I'm gonna bring you back.
That's true, though. That's true.
Like,
That's true.
I'm gonna cancel you, but in the end, we're gonna be together.
Right.
He's like, if you're mine, if I love you, I love you for real.
Right.
And it's amazing what we cancel our spouse for.
That's the thing.
Like the frivolous things that we will end a marriage for in this culture,
because they're not
mind-blowing.
making a certain money by a certain time. This one's really sad.
Yeah.
I actually know of a couple, Mark, years ago where the wife got canceled because she got cancer. And the husband felt like, I just can't do this anymore. You're not the same person. And I'm sure she wasn't, because a cancer diagnosis, I think, would change anyone.
Yeah.
But I look at my own parents and my mom's cancer diagnosis, and I knew from day one, it never even occurred to my dad that this would be a reason to leave.
Yeah.
But that young couple didn't make it, and from what I gather, from what I understand, he felt like, listen, she was sick.
Yeah.
I didn't like seeing her like that. It got tough for me. So I just decided to bow out. And I'm like, if it's getting tough for you to see her that sick, how about something along the lines of calling up family members and saying, can y'all stay with her for a few days? I need to just go to like a local hotel. Not to even do anything sinister. I just need to think. I need to clear my... But that's what I mean, is like canceling your spouse for things that are not cancel worthy.
Not cancel worthy. And no one goes into their marriage saying, we're going to have to get through cancer.
Right.
No one goes into the marriage saying, we're going to have to go through, severe tragedy. We're going to have to go through extensive suffering.
Correct.
Right? We kind of walk into marriage saying, yeah, we know our spouse may lose their job.
Yeah.
Yeah, but did you consider that they would get sick?
Right.
And they lose their job. And you lose your house.
Yeah.
And your kids are like going through at school.
Right.
And you get, so it's like the compound effect that we don't really plan for, don't foresee when we enter into marriage, but that's absolutely life. And for me, like canceling and divorce, and for us, it's not an option.
Exactly.
Right? But certain people feel like I can cancel my current spouse and I can go get another one.
Yeah.
Like we treat our spouses, the ones that we love, like they're things, like they're possessions.
Correct.
And we could just get another one. We get a new suit, get a new pair of shoes, get a new car, get a new spouse.
Correct.
Right? And then people also realize that, number one, there's no perfect person.
Right.
But number two, is extremely difficult to get back out there and find someone and find someone that's better. Even especially when you've
Yeah.
had someone that's good,
Right.
great character, trustworthy, and you cancel them just because you didn't like something.
Correct.
To go out there and pull another spouse off the shelf, that's
Right.
going to be better.
Not gonna happen.
Not going to happen.
It's not gonna happen.
Not going to happen.
And it's also, I believe, even deeper in terms of why cancel culture is coming
Yeah.
into even Christ-centered marriages, because Christ literally ordained the institution of marriage.
Yeah.
And the enemy wants to see Christ-centered marriages crumble. He wants to see the institution of marriage crumble. Why?
Yeah.
Because when God ordains a man and a woman
Yeah.
to be married and they come together, the impact that that can have on the earth is tremendous. The impact that that union can have on generations that come after them is tremendous.
Yeah.
How many of us that are doing well in our marriages and doing well in life are still living off the prayers that our grandmothers prayed?
Yeah.
Are still living off the prayers that our grandfathers prayed, that
Yeah.
our aunts and uncles prayed. And so, because I believe the enemy doesn't know everything, but he at least knows enough to know that if a couple really
Yeah.
buckles down and says, we are going to live this marriage and walk it out in a Christ-centered way, he knows that that is a big, tremendous detriment to him.
Right.
And I think that is another reason why he wants to see it break up. And also, I've heard from people who have been divorced before say that even in situations where the divorce was warranted and may have had biblical grounds, it's
Yeah.
still like a death and you go
Yeah.
through a grieving process. I can't imagine how much more for divorce that happened in a marriage where the marriage really could have been salvaged.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's amazing how the enemy has like convinced us
Yeah.
that something is worth discarding. Something
Yeah.
so valuable as your spouse, it's worth just throwing in the trash, never to be seen again. And as you were talking, I was thinking, I wanted to ask you, like, do you think, or how much do you think a generational curse of divorce, if I want to term it that way, or how much do you think a history of divorce in someone's ancestry, in someone's line, will actually affect their marriage and come into a play? Do you think if their mama got a divorce, if their grandmother got a divorce, if divorce runs in their family, do you think that's something that can actually rear its ugly head in their marriage?
I think if they don't take the time to be diligent in
Yeah.
prayer and spiritual warfare about it, yes.
Yeah.
Because what happens is it's not only a pattern that has a spiritual component, but even just psychologically, if that's what you see growing up, if you see grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles get a divorce,
Yeah.
psychologically and subconsciously, it starts to tell you this is how we deal with problems. We run away, or we allow the other person to walk away.
Absolutely.
And so I think that while coming from a history of divorce doesn't mean you now have to get a divorce, it does mean that that may be something that you have to pray against in a different way than someone who comes from a line of successful marriage.
Absolutely.
So I don't take for granted that we come from a line of successful marriage on both sides.
Yeah.
So I still pray over our marriage. We still cover our marriage.
Absolutely.
But I do think that there is something spiritually and psychologically embedded in someone who's raised just seeing divorce after divorce after
Yeah.
divorce.
Yeah, I do think there's a psychological component. I think there's a spiritual component, because the enemy plays in the sandbox
Yeah,
of patterns,
exactly.
right?
Yep.
So because he's not omniscient, because he doesn't know all things like God does, he watches patterns. So
Yeah.
if he's seen for generations that this family struggles with divorce, then he's absolutely going to use that
Yep.
to bring into your marriage and say you're going to struggle with divorce. As soon as you come up on a problem,
Yeah.
he's going to throw that in your face, or
Correct.
maybe you'll be thinking about it spiritually. We do have to wrestle with things that have been passed down,
Yes.
right? Intentionally and unintentionally. And I think also to say that you grew up in an environment where a lot of people in your family got a divorce and that didn't somehow subconsciously seep into your thinking
Yeah.
or shape how you think about relationships and marriage would be total ignorance, right?
Yeah.
Would be, I think, ignorant to how much these things can affect us.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe your mom didn't say anything negative about your dad when they got a divorce. But what about her body language?
Yeah.
Right? What about a side conversation? What about a side eye? What about what she didn't say?
Yeah.
Right? That left you in a place where you're assuming, right? How relationships really work or how to deal with problems in relationship. All these things affect us. And so we believe that generational curses are broken through the blood of Jesus,
Absolutely.
right? But that doesn't mean you don't still have to wrestle with
Right.
the devils of your parents and the devils of your grandparents and the devils of your ancestry psychologically. Like that doesn't mean that psychologically you won't have to wage war
Yeah.
against something that those in your bloodline have struggled with. And I think that you should be aware of that, right? You should walk into marriage kind of knowing how you've been shaped, how you've been cultured. And we walked into this thing having come from strong lineage of successful marriages. We walked into it like not even considering that this won't work. We didn't know everything about each other.
Correct.
We didn't know where life would take us, but we're just like, it's not even a thought.
Yeah, it's not a
And
thought.
to this day, it's not even a thought.
Never. No.
It's not even a thought. So I think that people do have to be careful of that. And then, Jen, do you think that following certain people on social media and following their views can impact your relationship?
Of course, because whatever you ingest, there's an old saying, you are what you eat.
Yeah.
And really, that old saying is just supposed to remind us that if we eat junk, our insides are going to be junky.
Yeah.
If we eat healthy, our insides are more likely to be healthy.
Yeah.
But I believe the same is true for things that don't have to do with physical food, but whatever you take in. So if you constantly follow people on social media who tell you why men are no good, who tell you why men, we don't need men, who tell you might already be married, but it's amazing how all of a sudden you start to look at your husband differently. All of a sudden you start to resent him.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you start to feel like, you know what, he could be better.
Yeah.
He isn't really that good. And vice versa for men. If you keep listening to men who bash women and talk about how women are just lazy, I don't know, all women are gold diggers, whatever the case may be, I absolutely think whoever you follow consistently is that is exactly why Jesus told us to follow him.
Yeah.
Because he knows whoever you follow, that's why he said pray without ceasing.
Yeah.
That's why he wants us to ingest his word. That's why David said, thy word have I hid in my heart so I won't sin against you. Why? Because whatever we ingest, that's exactly what we or who we become. So
absolutely.
I do think that depending on who you follow, it's going to have an impact on how you view men or women.
Absolutely. And people are, we used to we've been doing this for a little bit. And when we were doing our earlier videos, one of the things we talked about was like, hey, if you're married, don't be hanging out with single folk too much. Right? Find other couples, find other married people. Like, you're married now, so you can't be hanging out with your single friends every weekend. Right? You can't be taking a girl's trip every month with your single girl friends.
Can't
right?
do it.
You're now married. And we were saying that because we were concerned that if you're hanging around with people who are not in the same category as you, where they are can influence where you are and where you want to be. But social media is such a big influencer today that you could actually not be hanging out with single people. You can actually be at home with your spouse a lot. But if you are following accounts that do not enhance your marriage and enhance where you are, you'll be shocked and you'll be sitting around and be like, man, why are we always arguing? Why are we always fighting? Why does it feel like we're not on the same page?
Yep.
And you're not on the same page because you're filling your brain with ideas that have nothing to do with where you are.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's a successful marriage.
Yeah.
Even if it's a successful couple,
Yep.
they're living a totally different life than you.
Exactly.
And just watching them too much
Yeah.
can throw you off. And you're looking at your spouse like, why you got a blue collar job though?
Exactly.
Like why you
when there's
but
actually,
you knew that.
And there's nothing wrong with a blue collar job, and you didn't have a problem with your spouse having a blue collar job until you started following this couple, and maybe both of them are maybe the husband's a COO of a company, and she's a high-end real estate agent. And so now all of a sudden you're like, well, how come you're not a COO? But that man is a good man. And he loves God and he loves you and he takes care of the family.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Or we watching couples and it's like, look at them. They're experts or they're influencers as a couple. They're doing, why can't we do that? Maybe you're not built for TV.
Correct. A lot of couples aren't, because actually they say that on reality TV shows, the divorce rate is really high.
Thank you.
Even if it wasn't a show centered around relationships or marriage.
Yeah.
But we've seen shows where the show is about real estate and fixing up houses.
Yeah.
And even on those shows, sometimes the couples end up getting a divorce. And I think it's because they start to lose their own sense of reality. They start to, for those that get divorced, perhaps they're losing a sense of reality. Perhaps they're losing a sense of why they got married in the first place. Yeah. I think that's also one of the key components to guard your marriage against divorce is always going back and remembering, why did you marry them in the first place? Now, if you married them for money and they lose their money, I guess you don't have... I guess you start to lose. That's why you don't marry for money. Okay? Because you can lose money.
Or if you marry them for how they look.
And that seriously, people can get sick.
That bikini.
People can get an accident. Right.
And then all of a sudden you're like, where'd that bikini bod go?
Exactly.
You married them for the wrong reason.
Correct. But if you married for reasons that are not shallow, you can go back to why you married them. Yeah. And you can determine, I married this man because he loves God and he's an excellent provider. And even though life right now is topsy-turvy and we may not have all the things I want, does he still love God? Check that box. Does he still provide for the family? Check that box. Does he still treat me with respect and with love? Check that. Then that means that you don't have a reason to cancel that man.
Yeah. And my thing is this, like, and before we get up out of here, I feel like if we don't know what success is, then as a marriage, we're always going to be chasing something.
That's good.
And never really content and comfortable in the marriage that God has given us, right?
Correct.
So if we don't really know what success looks like for us,
right,
then we'll be looking at somebody else, something else, and be ready to divorce our spouse because we're not satisfied. Like, Jen, how do you become satisfied and feel like we're good, we're successful?
Yeah.
Like we've got it. We've reached, a place of success and satisfaction, and we should be content with where God is.
And it reminds me of something that one of our mentors told us. Now, he was giving us this piece of advice that I'm about to share with you all as it relates to ministry. Yeah. But I think it's applicable to marriage now that you're talking about success, because one of our mentors said to us one time, or said to you on the phone, he said, Mark, sometimes success just looks like faithfulness.
Come on.
And so in your marriage, if you don't have all of the money that you want yet, if you don't live in the neighborhood that you both desire, if you don't have the ability to go on the dream vacation you're still saving for, but there's faithfulness in that marriage, faithfulness to God and faithfulness to each other, then our mentor would say in this season, that's success. But I would say in marriage, in every season, that is success.
Let's go.
So even after you get the car and you get the house and you get the dream vacation, if the faithfulness to God has waned and the faithfulness to each other has waned, then you still actually aren't successful.
Yeah.
Because success often looks like faithfulness. And I just found that our mentor that gave us that piece of advice, I still meditate on those words.
Yeah.
He's such a humble guy, the mentor that we're referring to, that he probably would, if he saw this right now, he'd probably be like, Jen, it's okay.
Yeah.
That advice was good, but I mean, not for you to still be chewing on it a year later.
Yeah. That's a book, though.
But it's so good.
Success looks like faithfulness.
Sir, we might be writing a book off of your piece of it.
Listen, that's real good. So, y'all, we hope that...
But we do have a book already.
We have a book.
That I want you to be able to get by clicking this link. Listen, last year, I want to tell them this before we go.
Yeah.
We wrote a book. And it is not just for married couples. It's also for those who are single and wanting to get married. It is called Marriage Cheat Codes. And it's all about all of the little things that you need to know to be successful when you get married or remain successful once you're married. It's on Amazon. It is inexpensive. Why are you buying all these other books? Buy ours as well. Let's go.
Such a great book. So many people have been blessed by it already, so we want you to grab it. But listen, y'all, this has been another episode. We pray and hope that this episode has really blessed you and really made a difference in your marriage. Share this. Tell people about it. We're back, and we pray that anything we can do to help enhance your relationships, your marriage, is a blessing to us and a blessing to what God has given us. So this has been another episode of Young and Married, and we will catch you next time. Take care.